What if you were part of an experiment you never signed up for? The screen glows softly in your hand. You scroll, pause, scroll again. A funny dog video, a friend's beach photo, a headline that makes your blood simmer. It feels casual, routine. But what if every flick of your finger was feeding an invisible machine, a system not just observing, but shaping you? This story begins not with a lab coat, but with a social media feed. In 2012, without telling its users, Facebook conducted an experiment on nearly 700,000 people. They tweaked news feeds, showing some users more cheerful posts, others more somber ones. The goal? To see if emotions were contagious through the screen. And they were. Users exposed to more negative content became more negative themselves. Those fed positive content responded in kind. The study was published years later. By then, the moment had passed. The damage, or the discovery, was done. The backlash was real, but consequences were not. And that experiment never truly ended. It evolved, expanded. Now, every platform runs experiments like this, every second of every day. They test how joy, anger, fear, and sadness keep you scrolling. Your feed is no longer just a window into the world. It's a psychological instrument, tuned, tested, and retuned again. What makes you pause? What makes you rage? What keeps you glued? This isn't about personalization. It's about provocation. Your newsfeed is not chronological. It's curated by algorithms that have learned, through trial, error, and your data, what keeps you emotionally engaged. Engagement means revenue, and emotional activation is the key. Maybe you're shown more outrage-filled politics because the system knows anger makes you click. Maybe it detects your anxiety and feeds you fear-driven headlines. These platforms don't ask permission. They wrap it in language like user experience and relevance. But beneath that is a relentless search. How can we keep you watching, clicking, buying? These are the experiments you didn't sign up for, and this is only the beginning. We'll explore the 10 most pervasive behavioral experiments running right now, each hidden behind the screen, each reshaping how you feel, think, and live. From emotion engineering and dynamic pricing to voice surveillance and predictive policing, these aren't dystopian fantasies. They're happening now. They're invisible, automated, and global. The question isn't whether you're part of these experiments, you are. The question is, how deep does the influence go? And what does it mean to be human in a world where algorithms know your desires before you do? In this journey, we won't shout. We'll listen. We'll follow the quiet patterns, the subtle cues, the unseen levers of the modern age. Because sometimes, the most powerful experiments are the ones we never notice, and we are the subjects. Welcome to the study. It started with a single swipe and a subtle shift in mood. You opened your favorite social media app. A few posts down, something stirred unease. A viral video of outrage, a sad story, a polarizing comment thread. You scrolled on, unaware that what you saw had been placed there, on purpose. This is the emotional experiment, and you're in it. In 2012, Facebook proved a theory. Emotions are contagious in digital spaces. By manipulating users' feeds, showing more positive or negative content, they observed measurable changes in users' own posts. Negative in, negative out. Positive in, positive out. It was psychological conditioning on a massive scale, conducted without consent. The study was published 2 years later. Users were shocked. Ethicists raised alarms. But for Facebook, it was already old news, because the experiment never ended. Today, every platform, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, is constantly testing how content affects your emotional state. Every scroll is data, every reaction a signal. Algorithms track what makes you stop, what makes you click, what keeps you engaged. And what keeps you engaged is emotion, anger, fear, outrage, sadness. These feelings are more powerful than joy, more addictive than amusement. They drive comments, shares, and time spent online, so the algorithm learns. It shows you what you're most likely to react to. Maybe it notices you engage more with controversial posts. It shows you more. Maybe you linger on sad videos. It feeds you more grief. All in the name of engagement. You're not choosing what you see. You're responding to what's chosen for you. This isn't about evil intent. It's about design, tuned for profit, not well-being. The consequences are deeply human. Relationships strain under algorithmic tension. Anxiety rises. Worldviews narrow. What you see begins to shape what you believe, not through persuasion, but repetition, emotion, immersion. This emotional tuning isn't disclosed. There are no pop-ups asking for consent. The experiment is hidden behind friendly interfaces and bright icons. But it's there, quietly adjusting your feed, adjusting your feelings, adjusting you. You can't easily opt out. The platforms are too embedded. Communication, work, community, all filtered through algorithmic lenses. And behind the scenes, these emotional manipulation tests continue, refining how to push, nudge, steer. Not all experiments wear lab coats. Some wear push notifications. As we continue this journey, ask yourself, how often do your emotions online feel like your own? And how much of what you feel is being gently engineered? Because when technology begins to shape feeling, we must ask, where do we end and the algorithm begin? It knows where you are right now. Your phone rests silently in your pocket or bag, screen dark, seemingly idle. But beneath that calm surface, it's recording. Not sound, not video, something more persistent. Your location, your every step, is part of a map someone else is drawing. Even when you've turned off location services, your phone can still track you through Wi-Fi networks, Bluetooth signals, and cell tower pings. In 2018, it was revealed that Google continued to collect location data from Android users, even when they explicitly disabled it. They said it was for user experience, but it was also for something else: prediction. You are part of a grand, ongoing experiment in human movement. Tech giants, advertisers, insurers, governments, they all want to know not just where you've been, but where you're going and why. The apps you use daily, weather apps, flashlight tools, games, quietly collect your movement data. Many have no functional reason to do so. They just do. Then they sell it. Data brokers aggregate this information into detailed profiles: where you live, where you work, who you meet, which clinics you visit, which bars you frequent. The trails of your life captured in code. In 2019, the New York Times obtained a dataset of 50 billion location pings from 12 million phones. They tracked people to hospitals, to protests, to places no one expected to be seen. The data was supposed to be anonymous. It wasn't. They re-identified individuals with ease. But this isn't just about surveillance. It's about experimentation. The goal isn't simply to watch, it's to predict. If they can forecast where you'll be next, they can serve the perfect ad, send the right notification, trigger the optimal emotion, and they're getting better at it. Research suggests human movement is 93% predictable. That elusive 7%, that's what these systems are trying to crack, and you're helping them just by carrying your phone. Location data is also being tested for risk assessment. Insurers use it to gauge whether you spend time in high-risk areas. Employers use it to verify behavior. Governments use it for crowd control and predictive policing. And every day, more apps join the experiment. More signals are harvested, and more of your life becomes legible to systems you cannot see. You never signed a research consent form. You just tapped, "I agree." You didn't volunteer to be part of a study, but you are. As your body moves through the world, your digital shadow moves with you. Silent, obedient, and sold. We rarely think of space, of walking, driving, moving, as something that can be owned by data. But in this world, it is. Your freedom of movement has become a trail of behavioral code, and every step feeds the experiment. So next time you check your phone to see how far you've walked, ask yourself, who else is counting your steps, and why? The price you see may not be the price I see. Imagine shopping for a flight. You check one day, then another. The price jumps. Your friend, on a different device, sees something else. It feels like a glitch, random fluctuation. But it's not. It's an experiment. You are being tested for what you're willing to pay. This is dynamic pricing discrimination, one of the most widespread invisible experiments in the digital world. Companies quietly change prices based on who you are, where you are, what device you're using, your browsing history, even your battery level. Two people can search for the same item at the same moment and see two very different prices. Not by accident, by design. Airlines were pioneers in this, adjusting fares by demand. But now, almost every online retailer does it. Amazon, Uber, hotel booking sites, they run constant A/B tests to see how much they can charge you without losing your business. The goal? Maximize revenue from you, personally. If you linger too long on a product page, if you've searched the item elsewhere, if you're on an iPhone in a wealthy zip code, the system sees that. It interprets those signals as willingness to pay more. So it raises the price. Not by a little, sometimes by a lot. The experiment is sophisticated. Algorithms learn not just from you, but from people like you. They build models, profiles of what kind of shopper you are, what emotional triggers you respond to, what urgency works best. Limited time only. Only 2 left. Sale ends at midnight. Every tactic is tested, measured, and adjusted in real time. This isn't just commerce, it's behavioral science, deployed at scale. In some cases, companies have been caught. Amazon in 2000 charged different customers, different prices for DVDs. They called it a random test. After backlash, they said they'd stop, but the methods became more subtle, more opaque, harder to trace, and nearly impossible to prove. Uber has reportedly charged higher prices to users with low phone batteries. Why? Because the system learned that desperate users are less price-sensitive. These experiments extend beyond shopping. They shape loan rates, insurance premiums, even which jobs you see. Algorithms are testing how much can be extracted from different groups of people, quietly experimenting with economic discrimination masked as personalization. And you'll never know it's happening. Incognito mode might help, but device fingerprinting, location tracking, and behavioral profiling often override simple tricks. There is no easy way to see what others are seeing or paying. You're participating in a test that's invisible, relentless, and deeply personal. Not because you agreed to it, but because you exist within a marketplace optimized for psychological manipulation. Every price tag is a question. How much are you willing to pay? And every click is an answer. So next time a price feels arbitrary, ask yourself, is it? Or is it exactly what they think you'll tolerate? It starts with a simple recommendation. You watch a video about healthy eating. The next suggestion? A stricter diet. Then, a fasting routine. Then something more extreme. Unrealistic body goals, unproven supplements, dangerous habits. Before you realize it, you're deep in a world you didn't plan to enter. This is the algorithm at work. YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram all thrive on engagement. And to keep you engaged, they suggest what's most likely to hook you next. But what hooks isn't always what's best. Often, it's what's most extreme. This is recommendation radicalization. Platforms run millions of micro-experiments daily. They test what happens if they recommend one type of content versus another. If you engage, they push you further down that path. The result? A slow, almost imperceptible shift toward outrage, obsession, or despair. You watch a political video. The next one is more divisive, then more polarizing, then conspiracy-laced, then hostile. The algorithm is not ideological. It's mathematical. If extreme content keeps people watching, it pushes extreme content. And it works. Studies have shown that recommendation systems consistently steer users toward more intense, emotionally charged material. People interested in self-help get funneled toward toxic productivity. Those looking for relationship advice get pulled into misogynistic rabbit holes. Those curious about politics are nudged toward fringe ideologies. Not always, but often enough to matter. These are experiments in attention, and you're the subject. Facebook's own internal research confirmed it. In 2021, leaked documents revealed that 64% of people who joined extremist groups did so because Facebook's algorithm recommended them. The company knew. It weighed the risks. And it kept going. Because engagement fuels profit. Recommendation engines aren't neutral tools. They're persuasive systems, designed to keep you watching, no matter where that leads. The danger isn't only radicalization, it's distortion. You begin to see the world not as it is, but as the algorithm shows it. It amplifies emotion, narrows focus, reinforces bias. It becomes harder to see outside the lane you've been nudged into. And the scariest part? You rarely notice the shift, because it's incremental. One video at a time, one post, one reel, one click. These platforms will say they're just giving people what they want. But algorithms don't just reflect preference, they shape it. You think you're exploring freely, you're being steered. So the next time you follow a video suggestion, ask yourself, is this where I wanted to go, or just where the machine decided I should be? It's quiet in the room, but you're not alone. Your voice assistant sits on the table. Your phone rests face down beside you. Neither appears active, yet both are listening. More than you think. This is the voice experiment. Smart speakers, virtual assistants, and voice-activated apps are part of a vast, continuous test. They're not just responding to your commands. They're analyzing your tone, your pauses, your background noise. They're listening even when you didn't mean to speak. You were told they wake only when prompted. Hey Siri, Alexa, okay Google. But in reality, these devices often activate by mistake, triggered by similar sounds, or even nothing at all. And once they're on, they record. Conversations, arguments, laughter, silence. In 2019, Bloomberg revealed that Amazon employs thousands of workers to review Alexa recordings. They hear people singing in the shower, private medical conversations, intimate moments. Sometimes they hear things that sound criminal. Google and Apple were caught doing the same. The stated purpose? Improve accuracy, train the AI. But these recordings are also used for something deeper: emotion detection. Companies are testing whether they can understand not just what you say, but how you feel when you say it. Stress, sadness, excitement, fatigue. Your voice becomes a signal, a window into your emotional and mental state. Amazon has filed patents to detect your mood and serve targeted ads accordingly. Imagine talking about debt, then seeing an ad for a loan. Discussing illness, then being offered a supplement. The implications are vast and deeply personal. This isn't science fiction. It's happening. And the test subjects are everyday people in their homes, their cars, their bedrooms. You don't get a notification when you've been recorded. You can't know which snippets are reviewed by humans. You can't trace what inferences are made about your state of mind. The system is opaque, but the listening is constant. It extends beyond assistance. Many apps request microphone access, some for obvious reasons, others with no clear need. Once granted, they may monitor sound even in the background. Your voice becomes just another form of data. This voice surveillance isn't just about what's said, it's about how much can be learned without your awareness. You might think you're in control, that you can avoid being heard by turning off a device, muting a speaker. But how often do you remember? How often do you know which apps are listening? In a world designed for convenience, privacy becomes an afterthought, and the experiment continues, learning from your tone, your breath, your background, your life. So the next time you speak freely in your own home, ask yourself, who else might be listening? And what are they learning from your voice? A photo is worth more than 1,000 words. It's worth your identity. You smile for a picture at a party. Someone else uploads it. You're tagged, or maybe not. It doesn't matter. Your face is now part of something much larger. Not just a memory, but a data point. Welcome to the facial recognition experiment. Every day, billions of photos are uploaded to the internet, on social media, in cloud storage, on public forums. Each image, knowingly or not, feeds the training of facial recognition systems. You didn't opt in. You weren't asked. You probably didn't even know. Companies like Clearview AI have scraped billions of these images from Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, building massive facial databases without consent. Their technology can match a face to a name with eerie speed. Law enforcement agencies now pay for access to these tools. You are part of this, whether or not you ever posted a selfie. Your presence in someone else's photo, caught in the background or center frame, is enough. The algorithm doesn't need your permission. It just needs your pixels. But identification is only the beginning. Facial recognition companies are now experimenting with deeper inferences. Can your face reveal your emotional state, your age, your gender, your political leanings, your sexual orientation, your personality? Some claim it can. The research is controversial, often flawed, sometimes dangerously biased. But that hasn't slowed the testing. The algorithms are being fed your features, your expressions, your moments, refining their guesses. Meanwhile, governments and corporations are deploying these systems in public spaces: airports, schools, retail stores, stadiums, cities. You may be tracked as you move through the world, recognized without ever being notified. And the risks are not evenly distributed. Facial recognition systems are more likely to misidentify women, people of color, and children. These errors have led to false arrests, harassment, lost opportunities, but the experiments continue. Facebook once ran one of the largest facial recognition programs in the world. It automatically tagged people in photos, building a vast network of facial data. In 2021, they shut down the system after legal pressure, but they kept the data. The learning remains. The experiment ran its course. You can't easily opt out. Even if you never post a photo, old pictures may still exist online. Cameras in public spaces still record. Friends still tag. Every image, every frame, every glance captured by a lens contributes. And it's not just about surveillance. It's about prediction, categorization, control. You didn't volunteer for this study, but your face, unchangeable, inescapable, is already in the dataset. So next time someone says, "Let's take a quick photo," ask yourself, where might your face go? And who or what might be watching it later? Every ad you see is a test. You're scrolling through a website, reading an article, or checking the weather. An ad appears. Just the right color, just the right phrasing, just the right moment. You ignore it, or maybe you click. Either way, your reaction is recorded. You've just participated in an experiment. Modern advertising isn't just about selling. It's about studying, running continuous tests on your behavior, attention, and psychology. Each banner, pop-up, and video ad is part of a grand digital laboratory. The goal? To learn how to influence you more precisely, more personally, more deeply. This is behavioral advertising. At its core is A/B testing. Advertisers show different versions of an ad to different people. They vary the font, the color, the image, the message. Only 3 left in stock. Sale ends at midnight. People like you bought this. Each variation probes for a reaction. And the system learns. It watches what makes you hesitate, what makes you buy, what makes you feel. Your click becomes a data point. Your scroll speed, a signal. Your shopping cart, a story. Combined with your browsing history, search terms, purchase patterns, and even social media posts, the algorithm builds a psychological profile. It knows if you're worried about money. It knows if you've just ended a relationship. It knows if you're insecure about your health, your body, your future. And it tests messages that exploit those vulnerabilities. Facebook, Google, and other ad giants offer tools for hyper-targeted marketing. Advertisers can reach people recently divorced, people interested in weight loss, people likely to buy luxury goods, people prone to conspiracy theories. Every ad you see was chosen because the system predicted you'd respond. Sometimes that prediction is right. The ads that work, those that make you click, pause, purchase, feed the system further. It becomes smarter, faster, better at knowing what to say, when to say it, and how to say it in a way you won't resist. And the manipulation doesn't stop at the screen. It seeps into your thoughts, shaping your desires, your fears, your perception of what's normal. It creates urgency where there was none, insecurity where there was confidence, longing where there was contentment. You might think you're immune, that you scroll past without noticing. But even unclicked ads leave impressions. They plant ideas, shift moods, establish baselines. The experiment works even when it fails, because each failure teaches the system how to do better next time. And there is always a next time. You never consented to be part of this research. You were simply online, using free services, living a modern life. But in exchange for convenience, you became a subject, studied, measured, persuaded, not by a person, but by a machine that knows how to push your buttons because it built them. So the next time an ad feels a little too relevant, a little too well-timed, pause and ask, did I choose this or did it choose me? You flag a post, you report a comment, you appeal a ban. It feels like moderation, a basic function of digital life, keeping spaces safe, drawing lines around what's acceptable. But beneath these actions is something much larger. You're training artificial intelligence, and you're part of an experiment. Social media platforms rely on AI to moderate billions of pieces of content every day. It's impossible for humans to review it all. So machine learning systems step in, systems that learn from your behavior. Every time you report something, ignore something, or respond to content, you're giving feedback. You're not just a user, you're a teacher. These moderation algorithms are trained on millions of human decisions. What was removed? What was ignored? What triggered outrage? What was appealed? And as they learn, they begin to make decisions on their own. What content to remove, what to hide, what to let spread. And this is where the experiment begins. Platforms are constantly testing where the lines are. What will users tolerate? What will spark backlash? What kind of moderation maximizes engagement without driving people away? These are not just ethical questions. They are business calculations. Your content might be quietly suppressed, shadow banned without notice, not because it breaks rules, but because the system decides it's risky, or unprofitable, or slightly too controversial for the current algorithmic climate. And the line keeps shifting. Leaked documents have revealed that moderation systems are far from neutral. They often reflect the biases of the data they're trained on. Content from certain groups is flagged more often. Nuanced speech is misunderstood. Satire is taken literally. Marginalized voices are sometimes silenced, while harmful content slips through. In 2021, a whistleblower exposed that Facebook knew its moderation AI was failing to catch violent and illegal content. But fixing the system would reduce engagement. So the experiment continued. You might think of moderation as justice, but in practice, it's optimization. You are helping to draw the boundaries of online speech, but without full transparency or control. You shape the machine, and the machine in turn shapes what you see, say, and believe. It's a feedback loop, and it's invisible, because most of the time, you don't know why a post disappears, or why your reach declines, or why your account gets flagged. The AI doesn't explain, it just acts. So the next time something vanishes from your feed, or you wonder why your words aren't being heard, consider this. Are you being moderated? Or are you training the very system that decides what truth is allowed to be seen? You sleep, but the data doesn't. Your smartwatch rests on your wrist. A gentle buzz tracks your heartbeat, your breathing, your movement. While you dream, it records, charting the rhythms of your night. This is not just self-improvement, it's experimentation. Wearable devices, fitness trackers, smartwatches, sleep apps promise insight into your health. Better rest, smarter workouts, longer life. But behind the promise is a quiet process of surveillance and study. Every step you take, every toss in the night, every spike in your heart rate is a data point in an ongoing, unspoken trial. You are the subject. These devices collect deeply intimate data. Sleep duration, heart rate variability, blood oxygen levels, sometimes even body temperature and blood pressure. On the surface, this seems helpful. But beneath, your health data is being used for far more than personal feedback. It trains Algorithms, builds profiles, feeds corporate research. Apple, Google through Fitbit. Other tech giants have admitted they use this data to improve their systems and conduct health research. They often claim it's anonymized, but movement patterns and biological metrics are hard to truly anonymize. They are uniquely you, and once the data exists, others want access. Insurance companies, for instance, they want to know if you're high risk, if you sleep poorly, if you skip workouts, if your stress levels spike. Employers might want to know if you're healthy enough to hire or too expensive to insure. Governments may use the data to monitor population health or something more. The question is no longer just, how are you feeling? It's, what does the data say about who you are, and what will others do with that knowledge? There have been quiet scandals. Prayer apps selling location data, fitness data sold to brokers, researchers publishing studies from unknowing participants. People think they're tracking their steps. They're really participating in experiments without consent. Even the goals of the experiments are expanding. Can a device detect depression from sleep patterns, predict a panic attack from heart rate changes, identify pregnancy before a person knows it themselves? These are not abstract questions. They are real tests being run on live data, yours, and the line between helpful and harmful blurs. You can't see the full picture of how your data is used. You don't get to opt in to each experiment. You likely agreed to it all in a long document you never read, buried in the terms of service, hidden in the fine print. And every night, while you rest, the experiment continues. You wake, you check your stats, you feel a little more informed, a little more in control. But control isn't what's being tested. Compliance is. So the next time your watch congratulates you for a good night's sleep, ask, who else is waking up with your data? And what are they learning from your dreams? You walk down your street. Nothing seems out of place. But you've already been seen. Not by a person, by a prediction. In cities across the world, a new kind of experiment is underway. One that doesn't just observe crime. It tries to anticipate it. This is predictive policing, and it begins with your data. Police departments feed historical crime records into machine learning systems. They include past arrests, 911 calls, neighborhood reports, and social data. The algorithm searches for patterns. It produces a map highlighting where crimes are likely to occur and who might commit them. But it's not just analysis, it's action. Officers are sent to patrol areas the system flags. People labeled high risk may receive home visits. Surveillance intensifies, not based on what someone did, but on what the system thinks they might do. And if you live in a neighborhood the algorithm doesn't like, that scrutiny becomes your reality. It feels like science fiction, but it's happening now. In Chicago, police created a heat list of people allegedly most likely to be involved in violent crime. Some had no criminal records. They were chosen because of where they lived, who they knew, or interactions they'd had with law enforcement. Visits followed. Warnings were issued. No arrest. Just a shadow of suspicion, algorithmically assigned. These systems often reinforce the very biases they claim to solve. If more police are sent to certain neighborhoods, more arrests happen there, regardless of actual crime rates. That data feeds back into the system, confirming its own assumptions. A self-fulfilling loop. Over time, entire communities become over-policed based on predictions, not proof. And there's little transparency. You can't ask why you were flagged. You may never even know. The systems are proprietary, protected by corporate secrecy. Their logic is hidden. Their influence profound. Some cities have paused or abandoned these programs after public outcry, but many continue. Others are rolling out new versions, more data, more modeling, more prediction. And the companies building these systems are now exporting them to countries with fewer civil liberties and less oversight. You don't have to commit a crime to be part of this experiment. You just have to exist within the data, be in the wrong place, know the wrong people, fit a statistical pattern. It's not just policing the past, it's policing possibility. And once a prediction shapes how you're treated, it starts to shape your life, your freedom, your choices, your future. So the next time you see a patrol car cruising slowly down your street, ask yourself, is it here because of what happened? Or because of what the system thinks might happen next? You didn't sign a release form, you didn't volunteer, you just clicked, I agree, and suddenly you were in. Every modern digital platform you use, social media, fitness trackers, voice assistants, online stores, is conducting experiments. They're not testing products, they're testing you. Welcome to the silent laboratory of the 21st century. What separates these experiments from traditional research isn't just scale, it's secrecy. Informed consent, once a bedrock of ethical science, is replaced by legal jargon buried in terms of service. Vague clauses that say data may be used to improve services. But improvement often means manipulation. You are studied without truly knowing you're being studied, and you can't withdraw because you never knew you joined. Every interaction you have online, what you search, what you watch, how fast you scroll, when you pause, where your eyes linger, feed systems designed not to understand you, but to predict and influence you. At scale, these experiments aren't just about curiosity, they are deeply profitable. The more companies learn about your habits, fears, preferences, and vulnerabilities, the more they can monetize your attention, your decisions, your identity. Advertisers want to know what makes you click. Retailers want to know what makes you buy. Governments want to know what makes you move or stay still. And all of them are testing, probing, adjusting. This knowledge creates power, not the visible kind, but the subtle. Power that can shape how news reaches you, what prices you're offered, what friends you reconnect with, what job listings you see or don't see. And the tests evolve. Each round of data informs the next. Each success breeds more sophistication. The systems get better, faster, quieter, and less accountable. They don't ask, is this ethical? They ask, does this work? Even if you try to resist, to lock down your settings, avoid certain apps, delete accounts, you're still in the data set. Photos posted by others, metadata scraped from your devices. Your shadow lingers online, shaping models long after you've stepped away. Opting out is possible in theory. But in practice, to truly leave the experiment would mean abandoning modern life. No smartphone, no internet, no digital footprint. For most, that's not a choice. It's not even an option. So the experiment continues. It's not one test. It's millions, layered, perpetual, invisible. And you are not just the subject. You are the product. So the next time you're online, doing something ordinary, liking a post, buying a shirt, tracking your sleep, pause and ask, what is this moment teaching the machine about me, and who is watching it learn? There's a pattern forming in the noise. One by one, the pieces click into place. Social media feeds shaping your mood, prices changing just for you, your movements tracked, your face scanned, your voice recorded, your choices influenced. At first, it felt like convenience, then personalization, then something harder to name. Now, you see it for what it is, an invisible system of constant experimentation, watching, testing, learning. and you are inside it. This isn't a dystopia in the distant future. It's a quietly unfolding present, a world where algorithms tune your experience second by second, not out of malice, but out of optimization. Every click, every glance, every word whispered to your phone feeds something larger, something adaptive, something always watching for patterns in your behavior. The systems weren't built to hurt you, but they weren't built to protect you either. They were built to predict you, because prediction is power, and power, in the digital world, is profitable. Companies don't need to know your name to know you. They know how you move, what you crave, what keeps you awake at night. They know how you respond to fear, to scarcity, to praise. And they are constantly testing how to turn that knowledge into influence. And here's the most haunting part. The experiments are working. Algorithms already influence elections, shape economies, shift public opinion, drive mass behavior. Not always directly. Sometimes through nudges, sometimes through omission, sometimes simply by knowing what to show and when. You may think you are steering your own ship, but how much of your course has already been set by systems designed to keep you engaged, compliant, and predictable? We are witnessing something new in human history, a species being trained by its own machines. And most of us never noticed it happening. Not all of this is sinister. Some experiments save lives, detect illness, perhaps prevent disaster. But the tools are neutral. The outcomes depend on who uses them and for what. And right now, the incentives are tilted toward extraction, not empowerment. So we continue, half aware, half asleep, participating in studies without knowing the questions, giving answers without hearing them spoken. We've traded our privacy for access, our autonomy for convenience, our consent for a checkbox. And all the while, the experiment expands. So in this penultimate moment, before we gather the threads, pause and reflect. What does it mean to live in a world where you are always being watched? Not by people, but by systems designed to anticipate your next move? And what happens when they start to make it for you? It ends where it began, with a simple question. What kind of world have we built, where nearly every moment is a test, every action a data point, every feeling a variable in someone else's equation? A world where the lines between service and surveillance, convenience and control have blurred beyond recognition. You didn't ask to be part of this. You never gave informed consent. You simply lived, signed up, logged in, scrolled. The tools worked. They made things easier, faster, smarter, until they didn't. Until they started to reshape not just your habits, but your understanding of self. This is the quiet revolution of the digital age. Not that machines learned to think, but that they learned to study us intimately, constantly, invisibly. And they learned how to change us. Every algorithm, every feed, every assistant, every camera is part of a network of influence. It's not a conspiracy, it's an optimization strategy. Each system asking endlessly, what makes you click, stay, obey? These questions aren't evil, but they are powerful. And power without accountability breeds distortion. What began as tools to help us navigate the world have become mirrors that reshape our reflection. The data gathered under the promise of personalization is now used to predict our behavior with frightening accuracy, to sell to us, to score us, to surveil us, to preempt us. And in the process, the idea of agency, the sense that we are sovereign over our choices, begins to erode. But this is not a hopeless story, because awareness is a kind of resistance. To notice the experiment is to begin stepping outside of it, to ask who benefits, to ask what it costs, to demand transparency, to reassert the right not just to be connected, but to be free. Freedom in the digital age is not just freedom from surveillance. It's freedom from unseen influence. It's the ability to decide who you want to be without being nudged into it by code. So as this story ends, let it also begin something. A pause, a breath, a widening of the lens. Because the systems will keep learning. The experiments will continue. But now, perhaps, you'll see them. And in seeing, you might begin to ask better questions. Not just, what do they know about me, but, what do I want to know about myself? Not just, how do I opt out, but, what kind of world do I want to build in? And most of all, what does it mean to remain human in a world that is always testing what humanity can be?